to my presentation. Okay, I'm being recorded, so I'll try not to swear. So as you can see here, I'm going to present you, I'm going to talk about urban archaeology. More precisely, the challenge of reconstructing invisible economic activities from Roman cities in Hispania with almost no data and some ways to solve this issue. I had to breathe between the lines. This kind of Baroque title, I tried to make it long because it's, well, not my presentation. My presentation, I'll try to keep it brief, so don't worry. But I wanted to represent the complexity of this issue, a complexity that I would like to really transmit to you. So maybe when I finish this presentation, you can have an idea of the difficulties I can have while researching urban economy, and of course, if there's someone in the audience that is already working on it also, so they will know. Okay, so should work. Okay, so as the introduction said, as you've been told already, this presentation stems from my personal research in my PhD project, which I'm doing in the University of Barcelona, which it's focused essentially on urban activity, urban economy, which it would sound, it should sound maybe a bit broad, but basically it's centered around any economic activity that happens within the city, namely and essentially what we understand as, for example, retail trade, craftsmanship, and any other activity that it's done for money, not for supplying or any other kind of let's say manual labor. So we need to have let's say an intent of enriching yourself, broadly speaking. But what's the issue here? The relative obscurity of the research on urban economy in Hispania acts as a challenge to explore new ways of obtaining, processing, and analyzing archaeological, epigraphic, and literary data on that subject. The current situation, the current statu quo, requires then a broad approach on the different individual solutions to the two basic needs of an urban society, then and now, goods and services. Up to this point, I have tried to obtain a solid understanding of the Roman city and its economy using all available sources, as we will see. And at the same time, I've tried to, at least up to this point, to use and to detect all the problems that might need addressing. So up until now, so this first year of research, my main objective has been to really find issues that need addressing. So because I wouldn't want to really have a research that didn't solve any problems, or that didn't, as I said, address any key issues. So during this first year, I've been really into finding what needs to be done. It will act as the foundations of the upcoming doctoral research, where the bulk of the raw archaeological data should be and will be analyzed, and the main approach from the thesis will be again and even more strictly put to test. So in essence, I would like to present the basis and the, as it's required, the theoretical approach of my research. So in the ancient city, as in the modern one, everything was on sale, and almost everything had to be acquired, since, of course, there was seldom the time or the space for self-supply for many of these urban dwellers. As an evidence of that, for example, Dio Chrysostom says, as you can see here, that the poor have to pay house rent and buy everything they get, not merely clothes, household belongings, and food, but even the wood to supply the daily needs for fire, and even any odd sticks, leaves, or any or other most trifling thing that they need at any time. And when they are compelled to pay money for everything but water, since everything is kept under lock and key and nothing is exposed to the public except, of course, the many expensive things for sale. For this very reason, it doesn't seem really strange that, according to also Dio, the occupations and trades of the city, if all are taken into consideration, are many and of all kinds. But it's not easy to name them all separately on account of their multitude. What does it mean that? It means that we have a lot of work, apparently at least, because as it happens today, the needs of the urban population are many. And of course, there is always industrious people and so people that want to really fulfill those needs. So, of course, there will be the market, of course, and of course, there will be the suppliers of that market. Then the same author, in a display of sophistic erudition, he does his best to enumerate as many as he can, as many traits or occupations as he can, with the pretext of proposing morally acceptable ways for the poor to escape from their condition, because that's mainly the objective of this oration, this discourse, to really, let's say, lecture the poor on what career path should they follow. So of the 22 traits he mentions between sections 714 and 726, only 2 could leave material traces on the archaeological record. From 22 that he mentions, only 2. The absence of written documents on daily professional life, like the ones, for example, that we all know from Maxirhynchus, or the ones available for later historical periods, has made all traits pertaining to what we now call liberal professions invisible to modern scholars. This, of course, has led to craftsmanship and food processing being overrepresented in studies on urban economy, which has set aside traits that must have existed, and also segregates craftsmanship from the rest of economy. I'm sure all of you will relate, because whenever we read works on ancient economy, and if we set aside works on more rural issues, so for example, agriculture, or for example, wine production, even in some instances, the production of amphorae for the transport of said wine. When we set all that aside, what does remain? Because a problem that we have, at least for the Iberian Peninsula, is that there exists a very, very marked bias on that regard. Why? Well, because many, if not all, but it's a bit maybe audacious to say all, but almost all treaties, works, and big monographies on Roman economy really leave a very tiny section to everything that happened within the city. And even, for example, general histories of Roman cities in Hispania, in general, they dedicate, if they do, a very, very short section to urban economy, which it doesn't make sense, because they were an essential part of not only the daily life, but also of the economy, because many of these cities' inhabitants worked on such trades. They were part of this economy, and instead we find that many, at least in the Iberian Peninsula, many works on that issue leave all these important, let's say, huge sector, they leave it aside. However, over the last decades, the professionalization of archaeology and more, let's say, analytical approach, they have allowed for the identification of numerous traits in Roman cities from Hispania, not only archaeology, but also epigraphy, which is a very, as we will see, a very important source of information regarding this particular issue. Those economic activities covered many demands and were interconnected with other productive processes, both within the city and also on its periphery, being its periphery the countryside or the suburbia. Another very, let's say, now it's a growing subject, but until very recently, it was also neglected on that, at least on that regard. Well, of course, as you can see here, and as I just make it clear in this side note, all these categories are just are made by me. They do not intend to really cover all facets, all sectors of urban economy, but they are the ones that realistically we could expect to find in the historical, archaeological, epigraphical, textual record. There are many others, but those are the broad, say, the broad categories, and also within a realistic scope, setting all others just aside until, for example, archaeology proves us otherwise, of course. So, what are the problems that I should have detected by now, the issues that need addressing? Well, I won't dwell a lot on this issue, but mainly we can find two or three. First of all, and I can tell you by personal experience, urban archaeology, not only archaeology in general, but urban archaeology, so everything that happens in, let's say, in modern cities, so in cities that are still inhabited, they present very important challenges for the archaeologists to really understand what was happening there. I'm sure I won't surprise anyone in that regard, but maybe I will be able to provide an adequate visualization that not everyone has access to. But in this case, we have two levels of, let's say, problematic situations. First of all, we have the horizontal level. When we excavate in a city and we do salvage archaeology, we do rescue archaeology. So we work for a company, we go into a site and excavate it. We're not doing it for, let's be blunt, we're not doing it for the goodness, not even from the goodness of our hearts, but also we're not doing it for just philanthropic reasons. It's only done because someone has decided to build there, or someone has teared a house down and wants to build something else. So in this horizontal level, we have the problem of limits. Which are the limits? Of course, they are not the limits of the house you're excavating. They are the limits of the house they want to build. So you will have, as you can see here, a limited, let's say you have a window into the past, but just the limits of that window. So you don't, the landscape doesn't mark what you see from the window, it's the window. So in this regard, it happens exactly the same. As you can see here, for example, it's just one of many examples we could find. That there's a bakery that maybe it's difficult to see here, but it's mostly on the lower edge of the horizontal or the diagonal wall that covers all the area. So here we have a bakery adjacent to a house, hence the mosaic. So what do we see here? We see fragments of several houses that face even the street. We can't see everything. We see a bit of everything. So that would be the first problem, the horizontal level. But what happens in the vertical level? I didn't want to really overwhelm you with images and plants and sections and everything. But the idea is that in a vertical level, the depth is also, as you all know, determined by the structural requirements of the building project. So, of course, if you have to build an underground structure, you have to build a basement or maybe a parking, you will excavate more of the Roman house, let's say, than if you don't. Or maybe if you have to build only the foundations for a lift, you'll have to excavate only a 1 per 1 meter section. So in this sense, the depth is also important because you only get to excavate as far deep or as deep, or in archaeological terms, as old as the promoter or the architect wants you to excavate. So we have limits in the horizontal sense, but you also have limits in depth. So we could have, in just an imaginary situation, this area that you can see here in the this bakery and this house, and even this area excavated in different depths. So we would have one stratigraphy here, and maybe another stratigraphy 30 centimeters deeper in another room, just because it's the area they are paying you to excavate, because you won't excavate for free and they won't pay you more than the minimum they are required to pay. The second, let's say, challenge, it's the constant situation or the context of constant palimpsest and destruction that we can find in this urban context. In cities where urban life outlived the Roman Empire, each later phase took a piece of Roman structures away, fragmenting, destroying, and also building over ancient public or private areas alike. Here I just present you, just so you have a visualization of what I'm saying, a picture from a site I managed as a professional archaeologist a while ago, also in Barcelona. And this is, just so you know, this is one of the most well-preserved remains and sections of these public works, and all the area, which was a huge area that we were excavating. This is one of the most well-preserved structures. So you can imagine the state of the rest. And these remains are not even Roman. So imagine if there are Roman remains, how will they be and in which state? Also, just in this, now that I have this image here, this is another example of the problems in the vertical, let's say in the vertical aspect, in the vertical issue. Why? Because we weren't allowed to excavate deeper than that. So we had to remain in the, if I remember correctly, in the 16th century. We couldn't go deeper because we weren't paid to go deeper. Just as simple as that. So how can we address those issues? First of all, well, we have some problems. We have outlined maybe some of the problems. For example, we have here the problem of overcoming the dispersion of archaeological data. Why? Because much of the data about or on economic activity, urban economic activity, it's not published. It's not in Google Scholar. it's in gray literature. Gray literature, which no one has, of course, wanted to publish because it's a lot of work, and because maybe there hasn't been the motivation to do it, or maybe there were other priorities, which is absolutely fine, at least for me, because they gave me a PhD, a subject for my PhD, so it's completely fine. And also we have another problem, which is that much of the data, it's being buried, or it's buried in the excavation reports, not only unpublished, but also buried maybe within excavation reports of very, very precise areas where they excavated from contemporary layers until maybe the Middle Ages, and then Romans, and perhaps older levels. So we have to go to, we should go, if we wanted to be thorough, we had to go, we would, let's say, we should go over every excavation report that may have affected Roman layers in order to find remains, or potentially find remains of economic activity. So that's a huge problem. So how could we mitigate this issue? Well, we could include at least a part, maybe a sizable amount of this data from gray literature into academic production. So in my case, in the PhD thesis, but also in other papers that I may publish, that someone may publish in the future. But also, we can, as the title say, build a database. Of course, I'm not discovering anything. This is the most basic answer to finding oneself in front of a lot of data, but at least it could produce a statistically reliable picture of this situation, which up until now, it hasn't been done, at least on that regard. The second issue that we have to overcome, it's, as I have presented to you before, it's a fragmentary archaeological record in Roman cities with later human settlement. Of course, this is not a surprise to anyone, I'm sure, but people tend to live where their parents lived. So we have, of course, many cities, especially due to the, let's say, the success of the Roman Empire in perpetuating itself. We have many cities that were Roman in one time, but then they were medieval, and then they were modern, then they were contemporary, and maybe you are living in one of them right now. So how can we, let's say, overcome this problem, this fragmentary situation in which we only have perhaps 20 pieces of a puzzle of 1,000 pieces? How can we do it? Maybe using, of course, with caution, archaeological case studies that are very well known because they have been excavated in extension. A thing that urban archaeology can't do, as I said before. There are two options that are also, and of course, complementary. First, we have foreign case studies, which all of you know. I won't even offend you by naming them. And also another alternative, which makes more sense because it has more cultural and historical ties with the subject of my thesis and the geographic area of my thesis, which is the Iberian Peninsula, Hispania. And even in Hispania, of course, we have many cities, many Roman cities that have been excavated in extension because for whatever reason, they haven't been inhabited after they were abandoned by the last Romans that decided to move away. This approach can give us a complete picture that we can have in other cities. So we can maybe try to detect other or trends, general trends within the city that we can't do in other places because we don't have enough information. Third problem that we have, it's the, as we said, the invisibilization of many immaterial professions. What I mean with immaterial professions, it's all those traits that don't leave material evidence. Because what evidence does leave a clerk, a lawyer, or a street vendor? None. So does it mean that those professions didn't exist? Of course, they did exist. I'm sure of it. But we don't know about them, at least from archaeology. So what can we do? Well, we can use every source we have. Of course, that's not a groundbreaking approach, but at least for the Iberian Peninsula, it hasn't been done on the on that regard about or while studying urban economy. What are the sources? Of course, epigraphy. Epigraphy can give us, let's say, can allow us to just take a peek on those traits, especially those who produced the means with which one could commission the engraving of an inscription. For example, craftsmen that worked with jewels, for example, they had the means. So we have examples of these kind of specialists that, let's say, that commissioned inscriptions, honorary or funerary. But that's not important. The fact is that we know that they existed, and we have names and surnames, or in Roman terms, praenomina, nomina, and cognomina. The second approach is a bit more risky, but it's to explore the possibility of going to the other side of the Mediterranean and study documents which are mostly administrative or personal documents. So they have, and they present a problem. They are very, very far away. But to a certain extent, can't we see and can't we say really that they, for example, craftsmen in Alexandria fulfilled the same basic needs than craftsmen in Barkino, Tarraco, Toletum? Well, with some caution, we could say that they did. Then we have to understand that they are different cultures and they are different areas. They are very far away, but the fact that they are administrative documents, also personal documents in the case of letters, can give us a higher degree of trust, or they become more reliable because they are not, let's say, ideologically charged as they would be if they talked about politics or religion. Because they didn't want the posterity to really know or to really learn about those aspects in particular, they can be more reliable, not 100%, of course, but they can be more reliable than another kind of text. They are for sure more reliable than the third kind of source, which are the ones, which is the information that is given to us by ancient authors. Information that is very, very scant. We have very, very few details about urban economy, and mainly coming from satirical works such as Martial, for example, because to many aristocrats, to many Roman aristocrats, which they were the bulk of the ancient authors, manual work was unworthy of a Roman citizen. We have, for example, instances of, for just to say one, Cicero saying that it's not worthy of of a Roman city that manual labor should be done by slaves. And even Dio Chrysostoma, about which we talked before, he's proposing careers in craftsmanship, for example, to poor people. He's addressing specifically to poor people, not to aristocrats. So those jobs are for poor people. What can we expect from people who were actively, let's say, that they didn't like manual labor because they thought it was below them? We can use it as indirect details, as comparative cases, but nothing else. And finally, the most important thing we have to understand, and that I propose, is basically to accept that most of the information has been lost forever, so less complaining and let's get to work. Thank you very much.